Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy B-Dale. We are back with another transmission. So if you're new to this channel, hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that hype button so we can push the video in the algorithm. So tonight's transmission, we're going to be talking about how the National Geopolitical Economic Security and Reformation Act works in tandem with the Big Beautiful Bill when you're talking about the collapsing of the banking market system. Now, the United Kingdom, they just put out a publication talking about how the banks is going to collapse if the American government confirms the existence of extraterrestrial life on the planet. Now, all this coincides with the World Economic Forum and the Council of Foreign Relations when they was talking about a cyber attack that's going to be amplified by Iran. Because when you're talking about aliens, you're not necessarily talking about creatures, because there's a dualistic energy when it comes to it. When you're talking about an alien, you're talking about an alien in law, which basically is activated by a foreign militarized group such as Iran. So we put those rice bowls in the chat. We finna get straight to it, ladies and gentlemen. Put those rice bowls in the chat. Put those rice bowls in the chat. So let me get my screen share going here. Hold on for a second. All right. Now, so when you're talking about aliens, you're not necessarily talking about creatures or interdimensional, outer dimensional, extraterrestrial entities. You're actually talking about an alien in law. We finna get into that because everything that you see taking place right now on the planet is activated by the golden age. We're going into the apex of the golden age because we're in solar cycle 25. So it tells you right here, it has begun. So you had the solar eclipse that took place on February 17th, to where the golden age of eclipses over the next 3 years, we're set to see 6 major solar eclipses in a total 3 annual ring of fire solar eclipses, which is the 3 total solar eclipses. So you got to understand something. These energies that's coming to the planet is going to manipulate the Metatronic overlay of what I call the 3-dimensional paradox of what I call the demiurge. So we finna get into that as well when we get through the transmission. Now, this just came in not too long ago. It says that based on tremendous interest shown, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying the releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and all other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interest in important matters. So God bless America. This came out on Donald Trump's Twitter. Now, you got to understand something when you're talking about extraterrestrial entities. Yes, they're very real, but this is not the time. It's not acclimated to the timeline right now, because when you're talking about aliens, you're really talking about an alien in law, which is a foreign militarized group such as Iran, Russia, China, and other, allies that coincides with that whole coalition. Now, Dr. Stephen Greer, he also says that he has prepared a speech for President Trump to announce the existence of aliens visiting our world for a millennium. Now, there's a book that you got to read called The Ringmakers of Saturn that was created by Norman Burgum. Norman Burgum, he used to work for NASA. And he said that, right before he died, he said verbatim that there was about, 9 to 12 feet tall extraterrestrial entities that he's seen on planet Saturn getting off a spaceship, because that's when he gets into the magneto-hydrodynamic of the concentric gaps of the rings of Saturn that creates the holographic projection of our simulation, because everything that's based on the illusionary world is based on the fact that it's a holographic projection that works in tandem with Saturn and the moon. Now, one thing you also got to understand about these interdimensional, outer dimensional, extraterrestrial entities, Dr. York, Freedom Master Teacher, he's been talking about this for many different years. He's wrote hella books talking about these interdimensional entities that come from the caverns of the earth, right? Because one thing you got to understand, I got a video that basically coincides with what I'm saying, because they talk about these entities that come from the water. Even William Cooper, who wrote the book Behold a Pale Horse, he also talks about how there were entities coming from the water, which is also equated to, the caverns of the earth, because he was a naval intelligence officer, and during his process and his excavation, when he was in the military, he said that he was near the Bermuda Triangle, which is also right by Epstein Island. He said that he's seen spaceships coming from the water. So now, the Bank of England must plan for a financial crisis triggered by aliens, says former policy expert. Financial markets could collapse if the American government confirms the existence of alien life. This came out last month. Now, you got to understand something. As I said before in the beginning of the video, when you're talking about aliens, you're not necessarily talking about creatures. There's a dualistic energy that comes with it. So when you're talking about the collapsing of the banking markets, you're talking about the big, beautiful bill. So all this coincides with everything that's taking place when you're talking about the reset that manipulates and destabilizes the Metatronic overlay of what we call the three-dimensional paradox. So when you're talking about an alien in law, alien is a foreign-born resident who has not been neutralized and is still a citizen or subject of a foreign country. Now, this is basically talking about Iran, right? This is talking about Iran, because according to the Council of Foreign Relations, a cyber attack on the United States power grid, they've been talking about this since, April of 2027, and they came out with a memorandum talking about this whole planning aspect when you're talking about the New World Order. Now, it tells you right here, a cyber attack on the United States power grid. It gives you an introduction when you go to the Council of Foreign Relations, which is a secret society that is connected to the deep state shadow government. So they put their plans in your face every time. It's kind of like the same thing when you're talking about cigarettes. For instance, cigarettes, when you look at the box, it gives you all the carcinogens and the things that give you cancer. If they put it on the damn box, they tell you, they got to give you the truth, but they use like celebrities and they put it up in commercials and stuff to give off this perception that it's actually a good thing, which is really a bad thing. So the same thing takes place when you're talking about these publications, stuff that they put in the movies, stuff that they put in the mass media. They have to tell you the truth. So when you go to the Council of Foreign Relations website, they give you this memorandum. It says the United States power grid has been long considered a logical target for a major cyber attack. And when you read it, it goes into you talking about Russia, China, Ukraine, Iran, which has the ability to manipulate the power grid when you're talking about a EMP, which is a electromagnetic pulse deficiency that destabilizes all technological devices, which can also manipulate the banking system. So that's why, the United Kingdom, they said the Bank of England must plan a financial crisis triggered by aliens. Who are those aliens? That is Iran, Russia, China, who has the ability to destabilize the power grid, right? So that's why I'm saying it's kind of like when Christians read the Bible, they take everything literal. They take everything literal in the Bible. So when they telling you about aliens, do not take it so literal. Yes, aliens are real when you're talking about, other dimensional entities or whatever, but they're actually talking about an alien in law, which is a foreign militarized group, Iran, China, and Russia. Now, and this is a FBI documentation. It says right here, working with our intelligence and law enforcement partners worldwide, the FBI has countered a diverse set of threats directed by the Iranian regime, including attempt to terrorist attacks, kidnappings, espionage and foreign influence operations, cyber attacks, sanctions, evasion, and illicit procurement and sensitive technology to support Iran's military capability and nuclear program. Now, before we get into this, because all this coincides with the 10 days of darkness, because they even put it in Revelations chapter 2, verse 10. It tells you, says, do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison that may be tested in for 10 days, 10 days of 10 days of darkness, which is equated to the tribulation period. Because right now, the great purification is at the apex of the tribulation period, which leads to the great separation. When you're talking about the spiritual metamorphosis of 2026 going into 2027, we're going to get into that later in the transmission. Now, I'm going to show you a video here in a second. It says Iran says United States risking crisis as Trump sets 10 to 15 days deadline for deal. So like I said, we're at the apex of something that's going to be taking place on the planet. 2026, you got to understand something. Some people say it's a 10-year, some people say it's a universal 1 year, which is basically the personification of a reset, because when you look at 2026, it's basically a 10-year, which basically is equated to a binary code. A binary code that manipulates the Metatronic overlay, because the 1 is a representation of photons and the 0 is a representation of dark matter energy. And when you collaborate these two energies together, that's when you have the revealing of the illusionary world that we live in. So the 10 days of darkness in itself coincides with biblical scripture, because I told you the Bible is nothing but a Freemasonic playbook. They're giving you the script in the movies. They're giving you the script in the memorandums. They're giving you the script in these, television shows. They're giving you the script in all these damn, in the news media outlets. They got to tell you the truth, right? So let me get my screen share back going on so I can show you this video here for a second.
He is directing the Pentagon to open files on aliens and UFOs. The president says it's because of the, quote, tremendous interest.
But why now? That's the question.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
The truth is out there, somewhere.
Where are they? I don't know.
And now, President Trump is promising to begin the process of identifying what the government knows about UFOs and aliens. Earlier Thursday, he accused Barack Obama of...
You also got to consider this can also be a deflection of talking about the Epstein files as well. So like I said, it's one of those things where you got to use your mental and spiritual fortitude to understand what the fuck is going on, because they are playing fifth dimensional chess and they doing a lot of semantics when you're talking about, the political apparatus. So when it comes to that, you got to be very meticulous of what you're getting yourself into. Do not take everything for face value. When they talking about aliens, yes, they exist, but they're actually talking about foreign militarized groups that has the ability to manipulate the energy grid system to cause the 10 days of darkness, according to Revelation chapter 2, verse 10.
Allegedly revealing classified information when Obama was asked on a podcast about aliens.
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51.
He made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information.
The former president's confirmation that we might not be alone.
That's it. We got aliens.
Led to so much online speculation that he quickly felt compelled to clarify his stance on Instagram, writing, "I saw no evidence during my presidency that extraterrestrials have made contact with us." Really? But the notion that more information may have been taken to our leaders than they're letting on really took off midweek when Lara Trump, who's married to the president's son, told another podcast,
There is some speech that he's going to break out and talk about, and it has to do with maybe some sort of extraterrestrial life.
But the White House press secretary brushed that off.
Well, a speech on aliens would be news to me. That sounds very exciting, though. I'll have to check in with our speech writing team.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
So aliens are real.
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. He made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
Well, the president can declassify anything that he wants to. So if you want to make an announcement,
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
we know illegal aliens are real.
Yeah, illegal. Only illegals.
Now, this isn't the first time the government has promised to probe what it knows about aliens. Back in 2024, the Pentagon released a report that said they found no evidence that the U.S. had encountered what it called extraterrestrial technology, and said most sightings were just ordinary objects that had been misidentified. Oh well. Ed O'Keefe, CBS News, out of this world.
See, that's what the golden age is all about, because the truth is stranger than fiction. This is going to be the new reality as we get to the apex of the Great Awakening period. They got to give you the truth, right? They got to give you the truth.
Obama later walked back on those comments, saying the universe is so vast that the odds are good there's life out there, but saying, I saw no evidence during my presidency that extraterrestrials have made contact with us. Really? Still, President Trump accuses Obama of crossing a line with his comments.
He gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. He made a big mistake. I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
Congress has already held hearings on videos like these, showing a U.S. drone tracking a glowing orb off Yemen in 2024. The drone fired a missile, but it appeared to simply bounce off the object. The former head of the Pentagon program investigating these objects testified nothing should be ruled out.
So aliens are real.
Well, I don't know if they're real or not.
Trump says his order to release the documents was in response to tremendous interest in the subject.
Conspiracy theorists will go, hang on a second, the former president, the current president.
And mind you, conspiracy theorists, we've been right the whole damn time. Like Billy Carson said, we've been collecting gold medals, since, 2020. We've been right the whole time. We've been right the whole time.
They knew what they were doing here. They're all in it together. Is this a moment within the wider debate of what we should know?
I do think this is a historic moment, to be perfectly honest. I've been researching UFOs from a skeptical viewpoint most of my life, and there's definitely something to it. And I think there's been such a groundswell of pressure and opinion in the United States, especially, that has led to this, current situation. And don't forget, we've had congressional hearings where decorated pilots have given, evidence under oath to Congress.
Yeah.
So, it's serious business. Over here in the UK, we still kind of have a jokey attitude towards it, which people like myself are trying to change. But there's been so much pressure from the public, from, Trump's, hardcore voters, basically, to push for this release. And I think what is interesting is what actually Trump said in, his announcement. He said it's extremely common.
You see at the bottom right here, it's because they try to give off the perception that the movie Man in Black, this is a science fiction movie. You see right here, presence of Men in Black operatives, right? They give you the truth in real time, ladies and gentlemen. Put the rice bowls in the chat, because we cooking up the esoteric knowledge and conspiracy theorists. We've been right the whole time.
Complex. And he mentioned the words extraterrestrial and alien. He didn't just say about UFOs, which could be explained away as just misidentified craft, art technology. Yeah. He's actually said the words extraterrestrial and aliens. Now, is this, hopefully this is going to lead to further revelations about the truth that there is some sort of alien presence here. But it could just be, a diversion from what's going on. You have to be open to that as well. And, and does the president, is he going to get to the truth? These are the questions that I want to know.
Yeah. And I think when Barack Obama, when the interviewer there said to him on that podcast, what was the first thing you wanted to know when you were president? And he said, where are the aliens? I mean, if I was going to be the president, that would be at least in my top 10, right?
Definitely. Yeah, me too. Is what we want to know. Yeah. And, and now mainstream science knows there's going to be alien life on other planets, in the universe. It's going to be plentiful. So there is a distinct possibility that we may get confirmation that there is alien life, and some of it may have visited here. And, I was told by an insider from Washington a few months ago about that Trump had already prepared a UFO speech to give on July the 8th, which is the 79th anniversary of Roswell. And, you know, and I actually went public. I did deliberate whether to release that information or not. But I did. I, you know, followed my instincts.
In fact, the Vatican, they hold a seminar every 5 years, and they talking about how, you know, to prepare humans for alien contact. They hold a seminar every 5 years at the Vatican, and they gather, you know, the great majority of these so-called, religious leaders all over the planet. So they, you know, they're gearing up for something, because I think we're at the apex of that year of when they're going to have that invasion process to prepare everybody for it. And that's leading into the 2027 when we're talking about the prophecy of popes.
And then Lara Trump just last week confirmed that there was a speech that Trump has drafted about UFOs.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the bit that what you said at the beginning, Mark, I thought was interesting, because the testimony of pilots is always fascinating.
When you hear the name Baker Boy, it's pretty clear.
So that led Congress to hold the first hearings on UFOs in 50 years. That was in May 2022, and they've had a lot more since then. But officials said that the objects in these videos were likely drones. So will we now see new files released, and will they change the what possibility that there is alien life? And it's interesting, there was a debate yesterday on one of the local channels for the Senate race, and Raja Krishnamurthy, the congressman who's on some of those intelligence committees, was asked about disclosure. And he talked about it and said he's seen classified documents and there should be more transparency in government. Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz today retweeted Trump's post saying it's time for disclosure. There have been a lot of hearings on this, including one just last fall in mostly the House, trying to discuss what these UAPs are. Those are what they call UFOs now, aerial phenomenon, the UAPs, what they are. And in those testimonies at Capitol Hill, these were decorated members of the military, a Navy pilot who saw that TikTok video. You probably remember that. It was on a drone camera or on an aircraft camera. They testified before Congress under oath that what they saw was nothing like anything that they have seen in the air before. So it's got some steam now, as now President Trump is talking about releasing all the files. That's why we wanted to have a short discussion with you. What do you think?
Trump has done it. Why can't our prime minister? You know, there's something out there. I'm getting contacted most days by pilots, by military servicemen in the UK that have experienced something unexplained, something real, something tangible. It's not airy-fairy nonsense. Yeah. Something is in our skies. Release those files.
Love it. Mark, let's speak again. Great to have you on with us.
And you know,
Mark,
another thing when it comes to, you know, the topics of, you know, talking about extraterrestrials, you know, when the so-called, you know, black people, when we speak about these things, you know, there's a mental illness, or they have something, you know, there's something going on with their psyche, or they're going mentally crazy. But when they get on TV and they talk about these things, they're geniuses. You know what I'm saying? They have a lot of intrinsic information that, you know, they have high level information and things of that nature. But, you know, a person like me, they would deem me to be crazy. They would deem anybody who was speaking about all these other things that we've been talking about this, you know, for years. We've been talking about this. We've been knowing those who's been tapped into, you know, Dr. Malachi Z. York's, you know, school of knowledge. We've been knowing about this, but they would classify us as crazy. But they can get on TV in suits and stuff and talk about this stuff. That's the crazy thing that I don't like about this whole situation.
Mark Christopher Lee, UFO researcher and filmmaker. Let's get a word from Nick Pope. Used to work at the Ministry of Defence for the British government, investigating UFOs. Good to see you, Nick. Haven't seen you for about 20 years or something of that nature. Nice to have you on with us. Of course, you would have signed the Official Secrets Act back in the day. For the purpose of this interview, can you just forget all of that official secret stuff and tell us where the real meat of this one? How much does Starmer really know to start with? Because our last guest referred to that. Would a British Prime Minister be aware if there were things up there in the sky?
I'm not sure that he would be. I think that the United States is very much the leading authority when it comes from this. When it comes to this subject, we actually know from declassified documents that the Five Eyes intelligence sharing alliance held a meeting. It was chaired, of course, by the Pentagon, May 2023. The Ministry of Defense sent 2 officials. I'm not even sure the Prime Minister is aware of that. I'm not even sure the Defense Committee is aware of that. Parliament should be asking questions, because the UK does know some things, but it's very much playing second fiddle to the Americans, as always.
Now, I'm going to show you something here, because there's a lot of phenomenon that's taking place in the atmosphere. I don't know what state this is in. I'm going to show you guys the video.
What is this? What is this? Yo! Look at this!
So as you can see, it's some type of rainbow in the atmosphere. And I don't, if anybody, you know, in the chat, wherever you from, if you know about this whole situation, if you live in this state where this took place, you know, what state was it in?
I'm so like, bro, what is this?
See, one thing, like they put the truth, like you got to watch them when you look at the movie cover of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, when he was able to manipulate his physiology and basically activate the flower of life to the point where he was able to turn into a chariot, a spaceship. So what happened was, you know, he was able to travel on 0-point energy fields. 0-point energy fields is basically the scroll of all, the activation of the chakra system to where you become the rainbow. So they even talk about this in my in this book right here, The Ancient Flower of Life. And they talk about how when you're at the apex of the sun cycle in the golden age, you're going to start to see rainbows, not just going, you know, like in a roundabout way. It's going to be going from horizontal, and you're going to see a lot of rainbows in the water as well. So you got to read this book right here, The Ancient Flower of Life by Drevalo Melchizedek. It talks about that whole aspect right there. It talks about how you activate your macabre light shield to where you transmute the energy of the flower of life within your physiology. And this is where you activate the 0-point energy fields to where you manipulate the ethers. So whatever, I don't know what state this took place in, but you know, there's a lot of phenomenon that's taking place as well. So when you start to see rainbows in the water, because the great majority of these entities, they live inside the water. So this is how you know that, you know, as above, so below, that dynamic is, you know, is real in real time.
This is the rawest shit I've ever seen in my life. Is it real? Like, what is this? I'm kind of scared, but I'm not, but what?
And mind you, I got that same image on my book, by the way. It shows you the rainbow because even Dr. Yorkie talks about how, you know, in the end, you're going to see a lot of cosmic radiation in the atmosphere. And that's how you know when the mothership is going to, you know, come during the time of 2043, and it's going to break open the firmament. And that's when you're going to have the Phoenix event of what they call the Great Solar Flash. So I'm going to get back to the transmission. Hold on for a second. Let me remove that. Put the rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Put them rice bowls in there. All right, we're going to get back to... So it's showing you in real time, as conspiracy theorists, we've been right the whole time. Right the whole damn time. So when you're talking about aliens, as I was telling you guys before, there is a dualistic energy. They're actually talking about entities and creatures and cryptids. When you're talking about the 72 demons of Goetia, who lives in the caverns of the planet. When you're talking about Nightmare Hall, Dr. York talks about that in his book as well. But you're also talking about an alien in law, which is Iran, right? Because Iran, according to Ezekiel 38 and 39, Gog and Magog are identified as an end times alliance led by Russia, Magog, Rosh, and including Iran, which is Persia, along with other nations like Turkey, Libya, China, which will basically attack Israel, right? Israel is what controls America. So some interpretations also include China as a part of the kings of the East, allied. So you're looking at the alliance in real time, because now you got North Korea, who was also allies with China and Russia and Iran. It says we could nuke Israel, right? And so that's why I keep telling you guys, the Bible was nothing but a Freemasonic playbook. It was written by Freemasons, right? There's nothing prophetic that's taking place. It's basically a script that they basically have to follow. It's nothing but a script. Everything is a script. Now, I'm gonna show you this other video of Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu, he talks about this whole dynamic as well. So let me get him on the screen. Hold on for you guys a second, guys.
Is developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000 kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers, and they've got under their atomic guns, in New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay, so that is a very great danger. You don't
pay attention to what he's saying. He just named off certain cities. Pay attention to everything that he's saying. I'm gonna play it back once he finishes whatever he's saying.
Want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America.
So he's basically talking about Iran.
Is developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000 kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers, and they've got under their atomic guns, in New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay, so that is a very great danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America.
Yeah, because it's basically coinciding with everything with the movie Leave the World Behind. Me and KT, we did a breakdown on Brother Rich's channel, and we was basically extrapolating knowledge, talking about how, you know, in the movie it shows you the red letters, and the red letters was basically written in Islamic type of context or whatever. And in the paper, it translated to death to America. In Iran, they've been chanting that ever since, you know, Qasem Soleimani, their top war general, he was killed off, I think was in 2021. So this is a real, you know, phenomenon that's taking place in real time. The perception of art imitates reality.
He should certainly consider stripping the Islamic Republic of Iran of all its offensive capabilities and perhaps its defensive capabilities as well, because it doesn't need defensive capabilities if it is not threatening other nations. There are no nations that are trying to take away its territory or do anything else to it. The problem with this regime is that since 1979, it has vowed, as a matter of policy, death to America and death to Israel, and threatens its other neighbors. So there's huge military forces, as you're showing, in the region. The president has a lot of options. I would think he would want to ramp up the pressure and make clear to Ali Khamenei, who may not understand this, he is not bluffing.
The Iranians have always pretended they're...
Shit is heating up. I keep telling y'all, we in that time right now. We're going through the apex of the Great Awakening period. We are living in that time period right now. So that it's not a coincidence that all this shit is coming out. You got all the stuff with the cartel going on in Mexico. You got all this stuff talking about Iran. You got all this stuff talking about, you know, North Korea nuking Israel. So something is brewing up to something, because I told you guys 2027 is basically the embodiment of the Great Separation. You're going to have to separate. You're going to have to pick a side, right? Because 2026 is the Great Purification, like I said in the last video. So that means that you have to go through a purification process to where the shedding of a fraudulent system has to go through a reset. The corporate apparatus has to go through a reset. Hollywood has to go through a reset. The political apparatus has to go through a reset. Everything that's connected to the three-dimensional infrastructure has to go through a reset. Why? Because it was built on fraudulent systems. A fraudulent system is a demonstrative government, democracy, the deep state shadow government. Now we're gonna get back to the transmission. So let me remove this here. All right. Put the rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Because like I said, we in that time. Conspiracy theorists, we've been right the whole time. But they want to call you crazy. All right. So this is what's happening in real time. And then you just had the former Prince Andrew arrested on his 66th birthday in connection with the investigation linked to Jeffrey Epstein, right? Now, this is where you get into the esoterics of, the numerical components of it. Prince Andrew was arrested on his 66th birthday by 6 police officers exactly 666 days after this happened, which is basically, because I demonstrated this, I talked about this because this was also during the time when they had the, I forgot his name, but it was a painting that came out around this time when the horse started going through, the United Kingdom, and he was running with the, blood all over him. So this is a representation of the Great Purification period of the red fire horse, the red horse of Revelation. So now the blood soak, I don't know why it keeps doing that. The blood soak, God dang it. So it's exactly 666 days apart from April 24th of when the incident from the bloody horse, all the way up into the time of February 19th, 2026. Everything that's connected to this simulation operates on a numerical component. Everything is based on numerology. This is why you cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater when you're talking about gematria. A lot of people don't understand the metaphysics of gematria, so they divorce themselves from it. So one thing you got to understand about Prince Andrew, he is a Luciferian black hat, right? Now, a black cat is also connected to the satanic energies of the Count Dracula bloodline. You got to watch this movie by Bram Stoker, Count Dracula. They show you in all the movies with the top. I think they also show you this in the movie Dracula Untold, and they show you this in the movie The Voyage of Demeter. And Demeter is the daughter of Dracula. Now, one thing you got to understand about, his bloodline, Prince Andrew, these are all black hats. This is what you call the deep state, right? The deep state draconians. So the Order of the Dragon, which is connected to draconian law that was connected to the Alpha Draconis star system that ruled under the energy of the moon, which is why they're not sun people. This is why they get their energy from blood and we get ours from the sun. So that's how you know that there's basically a cursed bloodline on the planet who is running this governmental system. So a black hat is a Satanist that's connected to the Count Dracula bloodline, that's connected to the Order of the Dragon, and the Order of the, this is their sigil right here, right? And he even talks about this in I think it's in Revelations. No, yeah, Revelations 12. It talks about the fall of the red dragon. It talks about the fall of the red dragon that is basically facilitated by Michael, and Michael is Melchizedek, and Melchizedek is actually the Christ energy. Because when you speak truth to power, that manipulates everything in the ethers. Because the truth in itself is a sword where you slay the demon. So everything that you see taking place is really, based in symbolism. As you can see right here, this is the Order of the Red Dragon, the Red Ruby. So the real life coat of arms of Vlad Tepes III, also known as Dracula, the House of Dracul, alternative arms variant, conjectured, tinctures by Jean Nicholas. So the Order of the Red Dragon, it shows you the emblem and the patch of the Order of the Red Dragon. Now look at the coat of arms in real time, right? It shows you that he's connected to that bloodline, because the bloodline of Count Dracula, as I was talking about in the last video, they practice cannibalism, because that's how the Canaanite is able to have some type of vitality on this planet. They have to have bloodshed. That's what draconian law is. The apex of draconian law is activated by way of fear and bloodshed, which is Babylonian blood magic and Babylonian sex magic, right? Which is connected to the Epstein files, right? And the whole the PG Gate situation that took place in 2017 when you're talking about Hillary Clinton. Now, you got to watch this movie GOAT. As I was telling you guys before, they put all the truth inside the movies. There's a reason why they put the truth in the movies, because 2027 is the transitional period, and when you go from the horse to the GOAT. So this movie came out maybe like a couple weeks ago, and it was produced by Stephen Curry. Now, this is the villain, because the villain in itself is a representation of the fall of the Western world and the fall of the Roman occupational government, to where the kings of the West fall off the horse, because now the lamb is also the personification of the chosen ones, as I was demonstrating in the last video when you're talking about the comedic instruments of the crook and the flail. The crook in itself is a representation of the shepherds, of the chosen ones, who have the ability to lead in the golden age. So in this video, not the video, but in this movie, it shows you at the end of the movie, it's like a championship game. The championship game, it shows you the plasma apocalypse that's going to be taking place on the planet, and it looks like an earthquake because the ground was going through an unbalancing process. So the GOAT in itself, as I was telling you guys, the 2027 is a personification of the Great Separation, because 2027, when you add up all the numbers, it's an 11. So it's a separation, as you separate from the dualistic energies that was cultivated by the Western world. Now, when you look at Steph Curry's jersey, I forgot to put the picture up here. When you look at his jersey, it shows you the Golden Gate as well. So it's not a coincidence. So the perception of art imitates reality. They got to give you the truth in the movies. They got to give it to you. That's why it's imperative to watch movies like this, even if they're just kiddie movies. Now, I got some other videos that I forgot to show you guys as well. Because also in the year of the GOAT, that is also when you're going to have the process of, you know, us getting attacked on American soil.
So following breaking news, a major leader of the Jalisco New Generation.
No, this is not what I said. The wrong video. Yeah, I think I already showed it already. Put those rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. All right. So we're going to get back to the... But yeah, when you look at Steph Curry's jersey, it shows you the Golden Gate on his jersey. It shows you the Golden Gate Bridge. So the year of the GOAT is basically the personification of the end of the world, which is a transitional period based on spiritual metamorphosis that is cultivated by the Golden Age, that is carried out by the chosen ones, which is the Lamb, right? So upcoming year of 2027 is governed by the fire GOAT, beginning on the Chinese New Year, February 6, 2027, and ending in January 25th of 2028. Now, this just came in today. Mexico's most wanted drug dealer, El Machino, killed military operation. Now I can show you this video for that. So the United States Embassy urges Americans in Mexico to shelter in place. All right. Oh, let me get this out of here. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I almost left the studio.
So following breaking news, a major leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel known as El Mencho is dead after an operation carried out by the Mexican army. An official says military action was carried out in the western state of Jalisco. It happened after cartels attempted to block military operations, burning vehicles, and creating other roadblocks to incite chaos. Mexico's Ministry of National Defense says military personnel were attacked and returned fire on the cartel in defense, killing 4 people at the scene. The U.S. Embassy in Mexico warning U.S. citizens to shelter in place until further notice and avoid areas with law enforcement activity. The U.S. State Department previously offering a reward of up to $15 million for any information leading to the arrest of El Mencho. He was leading one of the most powerful crime organizations in all of Mexico. And earlier this month, President Trump designated this new generation cartel as a foreign terrorist organization. The DEA alleging it has a presence in all 50 U.S. states, distributing illegal drugs. They are one of the main suppliers of cocaine on the U.S. market. The group is said to have earned billions of dollars from its production of illegal and sometimes deadly methamphetamine.
So also, when you're talking about the cartel, because I was telling you, this whole industry is being destabilized. Everything that's connected to the corporate apparatus, because the deep state shadow government is what controls the great majority of the drugs that comes into America. The city I live in is the #1 manufacturer for methamphetamine, right? And my city was also mentioned in the Epstein files 25 times. So there's a symbiotic connection that coincides with everything that's taking place, because they have the Shriners Fest. There's a lot of Freemasonic energy in this city. So when you destabilize the drug market, that's when you're going to have the activation of the sleeper cells. Because like I said, the demonstrative government, the Democrats, they open up the borders, because the sleeper cells, they just waiting to be activated. It's kind of like the same thing that's going to be happening in America, just like what took place in the movie Red Dawn. So we got that in real time going on. All right, we're going to get back to the rest of the transmission. Now, there's some, I talked to my brother Rod Hayes, my OG. Now, you got to understand something. Like, I talked to Rod Hayes, and, you know, and you sometimes you got to go, you know, do your own independent research on yourself. And I told him, you know, I put his name in Google search, and I put my name and others, and that speaks about, you know, intrinsic truth and things of that nature. So I put my name in the Google search, BDL 1014 in Israel, and it shows you right here who's been searching me in Israel. As you can see right here, this is the Tel Aviv district in central Israel, where you have Israeli intelligence, the Mossad. It shows you the central district right here. Now, mind you, and I looked this up myself. This is how you know that a lot of us, you know, is being watched in real time. So when you go to the Mossad Foreign Intelligence, the Mossad headquarters north of the Tel Aviv, near such and such, and that location is technically in Israel's central district. Like I said, a lot of us is being watched. You know what I'm saying? My name has been searched over 100 times. So it's one of those things where, like, you know, if some, you know, weird happens or whatever, you know, to me, that ain't got nothing to do with me. Like I said, I don't do drugs. You know what I'm saying? I don't pop pills. You know what I'm saying? I'm not into anything that's, you know, considered like a form of deviancy. So if they try to, you know, place anything like negative on me, you already know where it's coming from. Because this shows you the district process right here. It shows you the Tel Aviv district. It shows you in real time Satan, synagogue, a Fox history. This is also a good book. I got this book on a PDF. So if you type in some of your names, some of, you know, the people who speak truth or whatever, who's on, you know, social media giving out, you know, intrinsic information, type your name in a search engine on Google Trends and go to Israel, and they're going to show you who's been searching you in real time. So a lot of us is being watched because that coincides with Project Pogo and Project Zypher. And Project Zypher, it talks about how they're going to start coming for, the people who goes against, the whole regime of Israel in America by way of speaking truth. And the synagogue. So the synagogue in itself, because the cursed seed in itself, for those who don't understand the book of Leviticus, the cursed seed is actually the synagogues of Satan, of what you call the Ashkenazi Jew, right? So the synagogue is a Jewish house of worship. And the only people who, worship in the synagogue is the people, those fake people over in Israel who signed the Balfour Declaration in 1918. And mind you, I also told you guys about this. I'm glad this came out because a lot of people thought I was capping. This is the man who taught Obama on how to be Obama. Harry Lennox, who trained Obama, who was finessed and charmed by So I also, you got to watch the movie 5 Heartbeats. This is the man who trained Obama on how to be Obama. And if you look at his whole demeanor and you watch some of the movies that he's played in, he acts just like Obama. Acts just like him. And you got a lot of stuff that's being manipulated in the atmosphere. So be very careful. And as I was telling you guys before, make sure you're going into a steam room and make sure you're going to a sauna and make sure you're keeping up your physiology. Make sure you're training because you want to sweat those dust particles out of your system. And this also just came in not too long ago. The scientists have found all 5 DNA and RNA bases inside meteorites. So the perception of art imitates reality. You got to watch the movie Meteor Man, right? Because in order for him to activate his metaphysical powers, he had to touch the meteorite. And the meteorite is what gave him his intrinsic abilities, such as psychometry, clairvoyance, intuition, telepathy, levitation, right? And you got this going on. It says in the New York Post, the disturbance is said to cause everything from headaches to mood swings. The spike in Earth's vibrations could scramble brains with bizarre ringing noise because the telluric patterns is activating the magnetic field. That's what's happening in real time because the brain waves that's coming from the magnetic field is what's giving you, that gives you the energy of the Christ energy. So we're going to do some Q&A real quick. We're going to do some Q&A. Let me get my screen share off real quick. All right. All right. We're going to get some Q&A in. We're going to do a few questions because I didn't get that much sleep. I'm probably going off about 4 hours of sleep, 3 or 4 hours. So put the questions in the chat. Salute to you. Salute. Appreciate you guys. And for those of you who haven't got the publication, the link for the book is inside the chat as well. It's really just a metaphysical blueprint on how to get through the apex of the golden age. All right. I wouldn't recommend getting out of, the United States because this is actually your homeland. This is actually the true Egypt. I even demonstrated that in the last video when I was talking about the Oriental Freemasonic book, and it talks about how America, which is Atlantis, is actually the apex of Egypt. So a lot of, the pharaoh's tombs or whatever, the great majority of those pharaoh's tombs was found in America in real time. So this is your homeland. And then according to the 1848 Supreme Court decision on June 6th, the geographical landmass of America belongs to the Moors. That is connected to the 5 civilized tribes. It says, can you repeat the search engine on oneself? I'm not sure what you mean, but I'm not sure what you mean by that question. Yeah, I heard about that, but I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true or not. You know the worldwide. Salute to you, Jedi Sage. Salute to you, brother. We're gonna get into some Q&A. All right, let me get some more questions. B-Dale, do you think we should do defense training as well? Yes, most definitely. You definitely, like I said, you got to have, the energy. You got to have the energy, you know what I'm saying, of a poet, but but have a warrior spirit at the same time. So, like I said, I'm not love and light. You know what I'm saying? It can get real dark at the same time. So you don't want to be, so subjected to the point where you're just all love and light. At the end of the day, you still got to protect yourself. That's why I push going to the gym so much. You got to go to the gym. You got to work on your physiology because when shit get real, you got to be able to protect yourself. Especially, a lot of women who don't have a man in the house. You know what I'm saying? So definitely, you want to get your ammunition up. You want to get your physiology up. You want to get your health up. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, eventually there's also a device inside the Vatican called the Chronos Visor. And the Chronos Visor has the ability to manipulate the space-time continuum where you're able to go into the past, present, and the future. So it's basically like a holographic projection device that gives you the whole timeline of what's going to be taking place in the future and the past. So there's a lot of stuff inside the Vatican. There's a lot of books and all types of stuff that they've been basically hid from us that has a lot of intrinsic information. Let me see. Yeah, the ringing of the ears is, sometimes the ringing of the ears can be, parasites, right? Because everybody has parasites within their genetic format and within their neurological functions. So a lot of times those parasites in itself can be activated by way of the metals. And those metals in itself is connected to the brain waves or the waves that's coming in, the EMF waves. So that's why it's imperative, like when you wear headphones, because the headphones in itself is trying to siphon the energy of your brain waves to the point where they upload it into a neuromorphic cyber cloud. So the cyber cloud in itself is trying to steal authentic energy, your thoughts, and upload it to, artificial intelligence grid systems. And that's what I call, when it comes to that. So the ringing of the ears, it could be metaphysical, but sometimes it can be parasites because a lot of times the parasites have the ability to mimic frequencies. They can manipulate frequencies. So let me see. Do you think Mossad is watching the followers of those who listen? Most definitely, right? They definitely watching everybody. They watching everybody. Because that coincides with Project Pogo and Project Zypher. Look that up. That's when you get into Henry Kissinger's National Memorandum 200, who was the Secretary of State in 1975. Salute to DJ. What about the Year of the Monkey 2028? What do you think? What do you know about the UFC fight card at the White House? I haven't really got into that, but I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna look into that. Salute to DJ. Well, in my city in Evansville, like as I was telling you guys, this city I live in is a Freemasonic city. And the Epstein files was mentioned in Evansville was mentioned in the Epstein files about 25 times. Now, I live downtown, and if you go, kind of close, around the downtown area, it shows you like this boy lover symbol. And the boy lover symbol is equated to the sigil schism that they implement in the Vatican, and it's connected to everything that was connected to the Epstein files, as far as like, human trafficking, child trafficking, human sacrifice. So that sigil in itself is connected to, sexual Babylonian sex magic and blood rituals. Now, the building, it was where I got that, when I seen the sigil from, it was connected to the Bronstein family. And the Bronstein family, when I looked up the name, they're actually the Ashkenazi. And the Ashkenazi Jews is actually connected to the Ukrainian mafia. And the Ukrainian mafia are the ones who control the Khazarian Tamga. So like I said, everything is symbolism if you understand it. And in this city that I live in, this is a Freemasonic city. They have the Shriners Fest. There's a lot of festivals here. They have the circus here all the time. There's a lot of Freemasonry, and there's a fraternal order of police here. And we also have a big, KKK regime here in Evansville as well. There's a big KKK presence in Evansville. And in fact, I think this city used to be a sundown town, I believe, I think. The 144,000 is not, a people, it's a frequency. It's a frequency that is activated by way of the non-ether, because 1 + 4 + 4 = 9, and 9 is completion, and the completion of the physiology. The completion of you reaching the apex of your God self, which is a Zohar body, where you tap into the oversoul. So that's when I was talking about, when they was talking about the 85 seconds to midnight, because that is basically the oversoul connecting to the throat chakra, to the point where you're able to speak truth by way of the activation of the spirit of Melchizedek. So the 144,000 is a frequency. It's a frequency that is activated by the neuroendocrine transducer, which activates the 144,000 crystals in your brain, which is the magnetites and the dendrites, and the calcites and the apatites, which creates geometric energy fields around the body. So that's why I said the telluric patterns in itself harmonizes with the frequencies of the brain, to where you start to hear ringing. Sometimes, like I said, it's a signal that you have to connect to, but sometimes that can be parasites as well. So when you're talking about the 144,000, it's not actually talking about people, it's a frequency, it's an energy. That's why I wrote the book, The Sacred Book of the Chosen. I talk about, I got a chapter in here talking about the 144,000. Yeah, chapter 3. I go in talking about the 144,000. So it's a frequency. It's a Christ energy. And that's basically the blueprint for the cosmic convergence, where you have all the chosen ones at the state of calamity, where they have to unify. So like I said, unfortunately, a calamity, ecological humanitarian crisis is what's going to bring the chosen ones together. Let me see. Salute to Eric Bedell. For those in the coastlines, how far inland should one move into the event there is a geographic shift? There's a CIA documentation. You go to the CIA website, it shows you the whole geographical landmass of America, and where they show you the safe zone. So you can pull it up on the CIA website. It shows you the safe zones, and it shows you the great majority of everything on the coastline, such as DC, and that's another thing. That's another reason why they took DC. When you look at Washington DC, when you look at the map, they took off DC because it's the end of the corporation. So that's why the new headquarters is going to be in Denver, Colorado. So that's connected to that whole conspiracy in itself. So I would say move to the Midwest. Everything in the Midwest is move inland. Places like Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois, St. Louis, places like that. Move inward. Let me see. Yeah, you got to watch the movie. Salute to Matthew, who says, "Do you think reptilians are going to eventually reveal themselves?" Now, they have to because, and the reason I say that is because when you have neutrinos, these energies that's coming to the planet is going to manipulate the Metatronic overlay. So a lot of people they have a misconception when it comes to reptilians. So the reptilian in itself, you got to study the Vril Society. The Vril Society is a parasitical reptilian entity that manipulates the optic nerve that's connected to the brain to the point where your reptilian cortex is manipulated. So that is the whole process when you're talking about people selling their souls. That's why you got the great majority of like celebrities when they make it in the industry, they start to cover up their eye, or some of them they have like a bloodshot red eye going on, just kind of like the same thing with Queen Elizabeth. So reptilian in itself is connected to Gnosticism when you talking about the archonic forces. Archons are basically the same thing as the cherubim in the Bible. The cherubim and the seraphim are basically that is the dualistic energies. That is basically the personification of the Anunnaki, or you, because when you break down Anunnaki, it means Dosin Ba Anu to Kiki means Ka means planet Earth. So you got the Anunnaki, the seraphim, and you got the cherubim. The cherubim is a personification of the archonic forces, who are also known as the Draconian reptilians. So they even talk about that in Dr. York's publications. They talk about, he talks about the great majority of the dualistic energies of the cherubim and the seraphim. So reptilians are very much real. I even got videos on my channel of people giving testimonies talking about Draconian reptilians. And the reason why you can't see them is because they operate through liquid crystal polarization. And they do it through the MQ9 Nano Reaper drone technology. So this is how they cloak themselves, through liquid crystal polarization. So it's kind of like, I gave this analogy before. It's kind of like when you're talking about shape-shifting. Shape-shifting works through the melanocortin 1 receptor gene. So it activates by way of a processing system. So just like a PS5, your PS5 processes the image and it gives a holographic projection on the TV screen. So that it's the same thing that happens. It's kind of like a neurological function that's connected to their physiology. So that's why a lot of times a lot of people don't understand the concept of shape shifting. So just like when you see TV shows or you see stuff on TV starting to glitch or whatever, that is basically the glitching of everything that's connected to their forms of technology. So this is why you don't have the ability to see them, because they're placating on your emotions. That's why everything, as far as like you live in a dualistic paradox, everything has an emotional energy, because your emotions is going to deceive you every time. Your emotions is. So that's how they do it. They manipulate your emotions. It's kind of like the same thing when you're talking about the reincarnation trap. Because when you go through the reincarnation trap, when you're talking about the holographic projection, when you walk into the white light, when you walk into that white light, you might see your daughter, you might see your dog that passed away, you might see an ancestor, you might see anything that's connected to your belief system. And that's how they use the holographic projection to galvanize you, to pull you right back into the reincarnation trap. So everything is an emotional energy. So that's why I keep telling people you have to be energetically balanced to the point where you're not manipulated by way of emotion, because when you're not manipulated by way of emotion, that's when you tap into the ability of becoming a seer, right? That's how you become a seer. You can't be manipulated by emotion. Let me see. Okay. He said, could we actually be underground version of America with a fake sun? They came out with I forgot the movie. It's called Paradise. Watch the movie, the TV show Paradise. They talk about that, how they're basically in the caverns of the earth and they live in an artificial system. So that could be a reality, who knows? You don't have to wait till 2043, because I told you you have to activate the Christ within you. So that's why I said you got to believe in your motherfucking self. Anytime that you don't believe in yourself, that's when you become the antichrist. That's why everything is being used as external stimulation to keep you from your actual internal self, to where you don't have the ability to tap into the energetic frequency of the soul, which is your inner child. Your inner child is how you escape the matrix system, but you got to tap into it. So that's why, people can't take things for face value. You know what I'm saying? Like, fasting and meditation is what's going to get you there. Fast from food, fast from alcohol, fast from sex, and you transmutate that energy as an alchemical resource. And then you use that energy as an interstellar vortex portal to get to your higher self. Once you reach your higher self, that's when you can escape the matrix system. They also, when you get into the esoterics of the keys of Enoch, they also demonstrate that the sun is actually a disk. But this is a conversation. See, I was going to do a video talking about how the sun is also could be considered an artificial celestial body, because if you live inside the firmament, the true sun is actually the star Polaris. That is the true spiritual sun. So the celestial bodies of the sun and the moon is basically encapsulated inside the firmament. Right? But the sun is supposed to be used as a metaphysical portal to get to the North Star, which is the star Polaris, the true spiritual sun. But the moon is a celestial body, which is a quantum satellite for reincarnation purposes. That's the difference. The sun is ascension portal, and the moon is basically a reincarnation portal. Let me see. Let me see. We get some more questions in. Man, I'm tired. I ain't get that much sleep, boy. Let me get some more questions. Salute to everybody in the chat, by the way. And make sure when y'all watching this video, at the end of the video, hit the hype button so we can push this information out in the algorithm. What can you do to fight back against the blocking of our frequencies from the chemtrails? I told you, you got to start fasting, meditation, going to the steam room, stuff like that. Because when you go into the steam room, you're basically speeding up your vibration. Because when you speed up your vibration, that vibration becomes magnetism. And magnetism in itself is the electromagnetic energies that activates the sun heat genes within you. So that's why I keep telling people, in order to activate anything within you, you got to be proactive. You can't be reactive to the system. So you got to be proactive. You got to go out into the sun. You got to unlock that junk DNA. But it can only be cultivated by way of mindset. Your mindset is what's going to keep you stuck here. Your mindset is what's going to lock down the DNA. Because I also talk about the vesicular monomod transporter 2 gene, the VMOT2 gene. That's what keeps you boxed in. Anytime that you're basically boxed in, you cannot unravel the junk DNA that they talk about that is, that you don't really need. That's how you activate the X gene to become an X-man. Let me see. We're going to get into a couple more questions, and then I'm going to get up out of here. White light means being recycled back into this realm. Yes, because it's an artificial light. It's a representation of the holographic fractal matrix system. So the white light in itself, because it's like going into duai. When you get into Kemetic spirituality, you got to go into the darkness in order to reach the apex of the true light. You don't go into the light first. You go into the darkness, right? Because darkness is the epitome of creation. I told you that we in the year of 2026, that's a 10 year. 1 and 0. 1 is the photon, which is light, but the zero is a personification of dark matter energy. But it's also talking about the metaphysical energies of sex when you understand the numerical components of it, because the 1 represents the phallus. Because the man in itself, the phallus carries, the electrical energy, the electrical conduit that basically penetrates the yoni portal to basically spark creation. So you got to go into darkness in order to reach the apex of creation, to where you go into a different timeline. So going into the white light, in fact, it's just kind of like the same thing when babies are born in the hospitals. You ain't supposed to turn the damn light on. You know what I'm saying? The babies is supposed to be born in darkness. Everything starts with darkness, because darkness in itself is the epitome of creation. Let me see. I just seen. I actually salute to DJ again. Have you ever looked into Santos Bonacci, his research into the occult, astrology, black nobility? I actually talked to him on the phone 2 years ago. 2 years ago, around the time when he lost his YouTube channel, I talked to him on the phone one time, and I forgot the guy. The guy, he has he calls it the Godcast. He worked. Yeah, Killer Priest is the one who connected me to Santos Bonacci. So I got to get in connection with him because we follow each other on Instagram. You got to understand something. When it comes to Israel, you the real Israel, because Israel is really Isis Rael, which is mind, body, and spirit, which is basically the epitome of the God frequency. So that means that you're actually a threat to the world. Your energy is a threat to the world. So that's why I said you got to understand, like, the esoterics and the esoteric. Like, everything that they telling you in governments and geopolitics and stuff like this, yes, Israel is a threat to the world, but it's actually talking about you. You are the true Israel, mind, body, and spirit. That's what Israel basically is. It's not an actual place. It's a place that they basically created, the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds is what created the state of Israel with the Balfour Declaration of 1918. They stole that whole geographical landmass. I would say so-called blacks because, black in itself is a false nomenclature title that's connected to the caste system of democracy, because the 14th Amendment is a fraudulent contract that was never ratified. And it also connects you to the 1724 Black Christian codes. So the energy, the energy is a threat to the world. It's actually the carbonated beings on the planet, to where you're able to crystallize, because crystallization in itself means that you have the ability to activate the flower of life within you. So that's why I said the whole eugenic system that's connected to the corporate apparatus is being another way to siphon the energy. This is when you're talking about Henrietta Lacks, right? Her cells was able to replicate themselves on an infinite level. Why? Because she's the black woman is the most intrinsic entity on the planet. The black woman is the most original intrinsic energy on the planet, because why? They have prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells inside their womb, to the point where they're able to do parthenogenesis, right? So that's why I said so the black woman is actually the most threatful energy on the planet, because your physiology in itself contains orgone energy. Orgone energy is what gives you the ability to manipulate the weather, right? Kind of like Storm in X-Men. That's what her ability was able to do. She was able to manipulate the atmosphere. So that's why I keep telling people, black women have to get back into their feminine energy, because when you tap into your feminine energy, that's when you're going to activate that X gene, right? Because Jesus really means Isis, right? And also, when you look at the metaphysical title of Jesus, The letter J wasn't invented until the 1600s. So when you really saying Jesus, you really saying Jessus, because Jessus comes from the word gas, and the gas is the ether. The ether is the metaphysical energy that activates the X gene within you. That's what that's basically talking about. You are the Christ. Let me see. Okay, I got another super chat. Salute to Joseph. Salute to you, brother. Okay. Do you know that Angel Mound? Yes, yeah, I've been to Angel Mounds. In fact, this geographical landmass here in Evansville was controlled by the Mississippians, right? Hence why, you know, you got the Mississippi River and the Ohio River that's also connected to this geographical landmass as well. So Angel Mounds, when you get into the historical context of Evansville, when you get to the apex of civilization, this landmass was controlled by the Mississippians. That's a fact, right? And the Mississippians are some of the oldest people on the planet because they're connected to the Olmecs, right? In fact, the Olmecs, when they came to America, they bought the weeping wood tree. That's how you know that America is the true Holy Land. Some of the oldest wood on the planet is in this geographical landmass of America. And you can find it in, you know, Mount Bayou, on the Gulf of Mexico. There's a lot of, in the Gulf of Mexico, you know, where the water is, there's a lot of, you know, mounds and pyramids in that geographical area. That's why you have a lot of people from Mississippi here in Evansville, right? There's a lot of people from Mississippi. Okay, I haven't seen that one. I hate that this updates, you know, there's a delay. Okay, here we go. Looks like it's updating. Ooh. Yoga is not really satanic, but you know what I'm saying? It's really just routine stretch. So stretching is now satanic. So this is one thing you gotta understand. Everything that's connected to the political apparatus is satanic. Everything that's connected to westernized religion is satanic. Just like when you go through the Eucharist ceremony, when you eat the body of Christ, that cracker, and you drink that wine, the blood of Jesus, that is a Canaanite cannibalistic ritual. Now that's satanic. Everything that comes from the Western world is satanic. Just doing a routine stretch is not satanic, bruh. So that's why I say you got to be careful of who you listening to, because you got a lot of people who are so patriotic that they're basically disconnected from spirituality. They don't even know what the fuck is going on. They just say stuff because it makes them feel good. So let me find out that exercising is satanic. Exercising is satanic, but the KKK is not satanic. Eating black people is not satanic. You got to read the book, the Delectable Negro. They used to eat. They just stopped eating black people in the 1970s, right? This whole political system that y'all built around to make it seem like, you know, black people are subhuman. Now that's satanic. That's satanic. So if you're gonna come in here, you know what I'm saying, start making some sense. Watch the movie the Eyes Wide Shut. I'm gonna do a video that's I'm gonna give a demonstration. I'm gonna show you a list of movies to watch. Watch Dracula Untold. Watch Bram Stoker's Dracula. Watch Nosferatu. Watch Eyes Wide Shut, The Ninth Gate. Those a lot of esoteric movies. Watch the movies like Warlock. There's a lot of Warlock movies. They got like 1, 2, and 3. Watch those. There's a whole bunch of other movies. Okay. Salute to No More God Games. What is the best way to prepare for the next Black Flag event? I don't, you know what I'm saying? I don't do timestamps. My guess would be, you know what I'm saying, just prepare, anything can happen. You know what I'm saying? The heat is starting to rise up in real time. Everything is starting to heat up. So you got the sleeper cells is eventually going to get activated. You got America beefing with the cartel. You got America beefing with Iran, China, and Russia. There's so much going on at the same time. While at the same time, our own government is trying to, unalive us as well. So, like I said, it's one of those things where, just be prepared for everything. Anything can happen during this time period. Anything. Definitely got to be, on point. Let me see. Okay. I'm gonna get one more question, two more, like a few more questions in, then I'm gonna cut out. I need to get some rest. And plus, I didn't even get to go to the gym today. I still got to go to the gym. Okay. Because the reason why no one has the ability to reach the Christ level yet is because, like I said, this system supplicates your emotions and they transmute it into a form of a weakness. You have a weakness for food. You have a weakness for pornography. You have a weakness for sex. You have a weakness for everything that's based on external stimulation to keep you outside of your true self, your higher self. So that's why I talk about in my book on cultivating the Christ energy. But you have to be energetically balanced, because the same shit that makes you happy is eventually going to make you sad. So that's why I said you can't. So just like, for instance, love can be a demon. You can love something so much to the point where it destroys you. Just like you got the people on, 500-pound life, they 700 pounds, 400 pounds. They love food so much to the point where it destroys them. You can be in a relationship with somebody and you can love them. So they might be putting their hands on you, cheating on you and all this other stuff, but you love them so much to the point where your ass is going to stay there. That's how you know that if you're not energetically balanced, love can be a demon, right? So that's why I said, in order to reach the Christ energy, you got to be centered. You got to be balanced. That's when you're talking about the laws, of Mayat. You got to be energetically centered and balanced, because the Christ energy is the path of the middle way, as I've been talking about. So that means that you have to master your emotions. You have to master your emotions to the point where you're not, in a destabilized state. You got to master your emotions. And I ain't saying like you got to be a damn robot. You ain't got to be a damn robot, you know what I'm saying, to where you don't care about human emotions. You know what I'm saying? You got to use, your emotions as a navigation system. That's what you got to use your emotions for. You got to use it as a navigation system to reach your higher self by way of emotional intelligence, right? So that's why I say I don't call myself emotional. You know what I'm saying? I'm sentimental, because the word mental was in there for a reason. It's a frequency, right? Okay, let me get. Yes, I definitely practice that. Most definitely. So like I said, you got to go. So also fasting is not only subjected to food. You can fast from anything. You can take fasting from sex. You can fast from, watching TV. You can fast from technological devices. Okay. Let me see. Okay. And fasting in itself is how you activate the candida enzyme. You got to speed up that solar plex because your solar plex is what connects you to the solar system. Because your stomach in itself, your intestines it's a brain in itself. It has neurons in it, right? That's where you get your intuition from. A lot of people don't have no damn intuition because you're not fasting. You're not fasting. You got too much, negative parasitical entities that is basically manipulating your stomach. It's manipulating your whole physiology. All right. Okay, we're gonna get to two more questions. I'm gonna get up out of here. Do you ever stop to think that you actually aid the elites by announcing the narratives? I would say no, because first of all, what I'm saying, I have to be on payroll. So most of the people who are basically considered as agents or whatever, a lot of them getting paid underneath the table. They getting paid by them people. This is why they can't talk how I talk. You got some people inside of, conscious organizations, they can't speak against certain things, right? And they're not going to say nothing. So I don't think I'm being weaponized. I know that for a fact. Because I get on here and I say what the fuck I want to say on here. Ain't nobody controlling me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not held down by a certain regime or nothing like that. Like, okay. How do you find out how many times my name has been? I don't know. You just type it in go on Google Trends and you type in your name. The Akashic. Salute to you. Salute to Net. I thought that was a question. Semen retention is very important because it's going to cultivate the biotonic frequency that's connected to the heart chakra, right? Because anytime that you spilling out, you leaking out your seed, that is when you overspill your cup of Hermes. And Hermes is equated to Thoth. And Thoth in itself is an energetic neural network because every time you ejaculate, you're basically spilling out brain matter, right? So that's why I said, how are you going to think at a high vibrational state if you keep leaking energy? That is basically every time that a man ejaculates, you're basically leaking energy. You're leaking loose to energetic demons that's connected to the energy of lust. They're feeding off your physiology, and you wonder why you got incubus and succubus trying to be around you while you sleep, manipulating your body. So semen retention in itself is how that's how you cultivate that energy of the glow. If you just imagine, when you go through a time period where you ain't had sex and you ain't did nothing, sexual, your facial features is gonna start to glow. You basically you're going through a process of recalibration. So semen retention in itself is a good thing. You definitely want to preserve your life force. I already answered this question already, but the 144,000 it's an energy, it's not a people. It's an energy that creates geometric energy fields around the body. The 144,000, when you take 1 plus 4 plus 4, that is a 9, because the 144,000 is the only demographic who have the ability to activate the non-ether, which is the lamb, right? The energy of the land that unlocks the scroll of all. Your scroll of all is your 7 tablets of destiny, which is cultivated by the Christ oil, which makes you Christ. Because Krishna is the outer manifestation of Shiva, and Shiva means 7, and 7 is connected to your 7 energy cortexes, your chakra system. So that means that you have to be in alignment in order to reap the benefits of becoming the 144,000. So it's not necessarily a people, it's a group of people that who have a certain energy. Your life force, your prana, is how you activate it. Okay, we're gonna do one more. It's kind of like the same thing when you ever watched the movie The Last Dragon. In the movie The Last Dragon, when they was talking about he had the glow, right? In fact, he practiced semen retention in the movie because he didn't even have sex yet. Remember, he couldn't even, he didn't have no moves, right? He didn't have no moves in order to, energetically connect with the lady. But he was able to tap into his glow, his energy, when he found out he was the master. Because he was going throughout New York City looking for the damn master, finding out it was basically the Sum Dum Goy, which is a place where they was, creating fortune cookies, right? He found out that the master that he was looking for was a damn machine. But then at the end of the movie, when he knew that he was the master, that's when he got the glow. And that's when he defeated Shonuff. And Shonuff was the personification of the root chakra. He had and Shonuff in the movie, he was basically the representation of Bruce Leroy's lower self, because he was operated by way of fear. He wasn't scared of Shonuff no more, right? So when you overcome the fear, that's when you cultivate that glow. You become the chosen one. I talk about that in my book too. I got a chapter in my book talking about the glow, right? Because anytime that you look for things outside of yourself, that's when you become the anti-Christ. You are anti-yourself. And that's what it means to be the 144,000. That's what it means to be, the Christ energy. In the movie, the name of the movie is called The Last Dragon. It's an old movie that came out like in the 1970s, and I think it's like 1979 or 1980s. Okay. One more question, and I'm getting up out of here. Okay. Exactly. Shonuff wore red. Root chakra is a representation of the red energy. Let me see. Get one more question in here and I'm out. I ain't trying to hit these spam questions. And make sure at the end of the video, y'all hit the hype button so we can push the video in the algorithm. All right. Okay. This thing don't update for nothing. So it ain't updating no questions right now. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys for tapping into the video, because we're going through, a spiritual metamorphosis in real time. There's a lot of stuff that's taking place when you understand the geopolitical apparatus, because, everything as far as like the financial system and the banking markets is going to be manipulated, because it has to go through that process of the National Geopolitical Economic Security and Reformation Act. And that also coincides with the big beautiful bill that was implemented by the Trump administration. And, mind you, you got everything that's taking place with Iran and, which has the ability to destabilize the power grid in itself. So everything that you see in real time, like I said, it's not a coincidence that we're in this time period right now. We're at the apex of the Great Awakening period, because, like I said, we're going through a transitional shift. Everything has to shift in real time. You got the energies coming from the sun. You got the deep state shadow government, as far as like the drug trafficking that's connected to the cartel. They're being destabilized in real time. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's brewing up for something. And then you just had the solar eclipse on February 17th, that just happened. And that is basically the apex of everything that's going to be taking place in 2026. That is the energy that's going to, lead you into the apex of the golden age. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. In the transmission.
I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. Karma's gonna get to you, and then you'll have a chariot with only one less friend. Now I had distant folks that are looking to my eyes to understand the wisdom he's given and his wealth from the skies. So thanks for this meal that I'm about to receive, and thank you for my health and all the good memories. Thanks for the courage taking on another day. When I used to not believe, but now I know about grace. Stay away from the fire, cause the flames does burn. Go with your gut feeling. When it's wrong, you learn. For every one step I take, the Lord takes two. And do unto others if you want it done unto you. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the This a completion, the selfish Proto-Grecian, Amerindian, Phoenician. I'm the last of the Mohicans, the bastard of the land, the pen, melanin, accretion. And we just trying to get back to the fact that we was kings and queens of a land before the avalanche seized it. I live on Turtle Island with the rest of the diseased. Better than the medicine for 7 different treatments. You try to ride away but end up getting seasick. The sleep can feel my words like Braille, and they're awakened with the penmanship of Hindu script written in them vacant monastery honorary payments to the prototype. Tomorrow's only a day away, but nothing happens overnight. The fuck's wrong with going left when you know it's right? Biting off more than I can chew, that's an overbite. Black on black crime is like watching 2 soldiers fight when all along they was on the same page. History. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land.